Minimalism for freedom, when less becomes more. My journey to minimalism did not begin as a conscious decision, but as a circumstance that forced me to change. At first, I had no intention of living with fewer possessions or spending less. But after the financial crisis, I gradually realized that owning too much not only drained my finances, but also became a mental burden. I started cutting back on shopping, not because I wanted to, but because I had no other choice. But strangely, the less I bought, the lighter I felt. The things I once thought I couldn't live without turned out to be meaningless. I gradually fell in love with simplicity. Fewer possessions meant less stress, fewer financial obligations, and more time to enjoy life the way I truly wanted. Living minimally does not mean giving up all comforts or the things that bring joy. Instead, it is about making intentional choices, keeping only what truly holds value. I realized that joy is not in having more, but in meaningful experiences, cherished moments with family and friends, and the freedom of not being tied down by material things. Recently, I have taken my minimalism to the next level. I now own just enough to fit into a suitcase and travel the world. This has given me a sense of freedom I had never experienced before. No more debt, no more attachment to meaningless possessions. Just me, new experiences, and a life fuller than ever. From financial crisis to freedom, the journey of letting go and transformation. After the 2008 financial crisis, I had no choice but to completely change my spending habits. With debts piling up and no longer being able to splurge on luxuries, I was forced to face a truth. I had been addicted to shopping without even realizing it. At first, stopping shopping felt like a shock. Every time I passed by a store, I felt a craving, as if I was giving up something important. But over time, I realized that the craving didn't come from an actual need, but from a deeply ingrained habit. Gradually, I no longer felt excited about buying something new, nor did I seek joy in accumulating more. Living minimally does not mean giving up all pleasures or depriving oneself of joy. For me, it was a shift in mindset. Instead of spending money unconsciously, I learned to spend meaningfully. I only bought what was truly necessary, and that helped me realize I needed far less than I had thought. The best part of this journey was the freedom it brought. I was no longer bound by the pressure to constantly shop, to keep up with the latest trends. I felt lighter, in control of my finances, and most importantly, I began to enjoy life in a whole new way. Looking back, I see that losing my reckless spending habits was not a loss, but a gift. A life with fewer possessions, less spending, but filled with freedom and peace. That was what I truly needed. Reborn from ruins, the journey to rediscovering true worth. Sometimes loss is life's way of forcing us to look at ourselves. When I lost almost everything, my home, my car, the luxury items I once took pride in, I realized how much I had relied on material possessions. I once believed that having more meant success and happiness. But as I stood amidst the financial wreckage of my own making, I understood that for years I had let lifeless objects define who I was. When everything disappeared, I felt empty, lost. But then, amidst those difficult days, I slowly realized one thing. My worth was not in what I owned, but in who I was becoming. The biggest turning point was the moment I embraced letting go. I stopped regretting the past, stopped seeking happiness in extravagant possessions. Instead, I learned to appreciate what truly mattered: freedom, experiences, and meaningful relationships. I began living minimally, not because I had to, but because I realized I didn't need much to be happy. From that day forward, I completely changed my perspective on life. I no longer craved flashy items, but focused on lasting values. Every item I kept had meaning. Every dollar I spent had a purpose. I stopped trying to impress others, and instead, lived in a way that made me feel the freest. Now, I own fewer things than ever before, but I have never felt more fulfilled. Happiness does not lie in what we possess, but in how we live and cherish each moment of life. From material temptation to true freedom. The journey of letting go. I once thought that owning more would make me happy, but the truth was, I was just falling into a bottomless trap. In my 20s, I was caught in the vortex of materialism. I wanted more, a bigger house, a nicer car, more expensive things. But I didn't realize that the more I had, the more I wanted. That desire never stopped. I shopped endlessly, spent money on things I didn't really need, just to feel like I belonged among others. But instead of feeling wealthy and fulfilled, I only felt empty and increasingly financially exhausted. Everything collapsed in 2008. The financial crisis hit, and I could no longer afford my extravagant lifestyle. The debts piled up, credit cards maxed out, luxury cars, expensive possessions, all had to be sold. From someone chasing after glamour, I was forced to face reality. I had been living beyond my means, just to impress others. Losing almost everything seemed like a huge shock, but in reality, it was a gift. I realized that for so many years, I had equated my self-worth with the things I owned. But the truth was, they did not define me. I was not my fancy house, my luxury car, or my closet full of expensive clothes. I began to understand that happiness was not found in material things, but within my own soul. From that day on, I completely changed my way of life. I no longer chased after superficial things, but focused on what truly mattered: freedom, meaningful experiences, and the peace of knowing I was living according to my values. From a house full of possessions to a small suitcase, the journey to minimalism. Everything I own now fits into a single suitcase, but I was not a minimalist from the start. In fact, this journey has been a long process filled with ups and downs, from large houses and countless possessions to the relief of letting go of almost everything. I was born into a big family where every penny had to be carefully calculated. We grew our own food, wore hand-me-down clothes, and tried to extend the lifespan of everything. Though we weren't wealthy, life was full in its own simple and warm way. Everyone around me lived the same, frugal, not chasing after luxury. However, as I grew up and stepped into the modern world, I gradually drifted away from that lifestyle. I was swept into the whirlwind of consumerism, believing that having more meant success and happiness. I pursued bigger houses, nicer cars, and endlessly shopped to fill the emptiness inside. But paradoxically, the more I had, the more I felt lacking. Then one day, I decided to return to my roots, the simple life I once had. But this time, it wasn't just a temporary change. It became a philosophy of life. I learned to appreciate what truly mattered and let go of what no longer held value. From someone buried under a mountain of possessions, I gradually found freedom and lightness with each item I let go of. Now, I have fewer possessions than ever before, but I have never felt so rich. Rich in experiences, rich in peace, and rich in the joy of knowing I am living a truly meaningful life.